Okay, so why open standards? We're going to look at a cautionary tale of these two companies, and they're both selling lemonade. We've got Know-it-all-ade and we've got Open-ade. And so while you're looking at lemonade, just simplify things right down, see if we can look at the core arguments for open standards, and then we can scale them back up again. So these two companies, they're going to both make some software and some data to sell their lemonade. So we've got Know-it-all-ade, and they're going to, they think they're very smart, and they think they know everything about lemonade. So they're going to make all their own software, going to make all their own data formats, and that's the way they're going to do it. On the other hand, we've got Open-ade, and they're a bit more curious about what other people have already done and what they're doing in this kind of field. So they decide to use open standards instead. So a slightly different approach for both of them. So up front, they both go away and get busy and make their software and their data standards. And we can see that it takes a little bit more time and money for Know-it-all to make theirs, because they have to think up everything from scratch. They have to think through all these problems. Where Open-ade have found some existing standards, and they can just say, that's good for me, I'll use that. So, for example, when they've got some examples of people in their system, Know-it-all kind of make their own kind of people databases, but Open-ade use some existing standards. Okay, so that's all well and good. They've built their software, and now they're going to start shouting about their new citrusade drink. Know-it-all, they've got their kind of person table, and they're going to send out this message to all of their customers. And it'll say, hello, Alice, hello, Bob, buy our super citrus lemonade. So they've done the obvious thing. They've got a first name field, and which you can use from the data. Just plonk in the real name there, and away you go. Open-ade have done something very similar, but they've used one of the open standards called FOAF. In fact, Jen mentioned it earlier on. So they're using an open way of describing people. All well and good. Fire out their campaigns, and they're selling loads of lemonade. They're selling so much lemonade that they start to expand worldwide. So this is where we've run into the first problem. So these Know-it-all start up in China, and they start sending out their emails. And all of a sudden, the guys in China are getting weird emails saying, hello, Smith, or hello, Jones, or hello, Lee. And they're getting their last names in there. And it doesn't feel a very personal message to them. Something's gone wrong. And of course, when in the Chinese system, you get your last name goes first, or sorry, your family name goes first when you're typing your name. So they've got all the names switched around just because they went for an obvious system which works for Europe. So the Know-it-all guys have to go away, change their system, and figure out how to make it to work for China. So what's happening over the other side of the fence with Open-ade? Well, in fact, nothing. They've used FOAF, and they have things called like family name in FOAF. So when they entered the data, it all went into the correct slots, and now it's all coming out in the correct slots. And the weird thing is, they don't even see this issue at all. So I guess the moral of this story is that they've used a system which somebody else has thought through a lot of the problems already. They don't even see these problems. They don't even have to think about them. Just by using this open system, they've had those problems solved by other people ahead of time. So the next problem they have is, they've all been built. They all built their systems on super fancy technology X, and technology Y has come along, technology Z, and it's right back to technology A again. Things have progressed so far. So, okay, we start to run out of perhaps developers who know the system, and so something breaks and they need to hire some new expensive developers. They try and find the technology X ones. They're not around anymore, they've all become super expensive. So what do they do about this? So they kind of have to get in a new team, and they've done loads of work to their system. They've made all of their own custom formats, their whole ecosystem that's built on top of their data. It all has to be changed and reworked. So we get big costs and big hassles for Know-it-all, just because they're using their own individual data, which has changed loads of time for all these ad hoc issues like the Chinese names. Open-ade, on the other hand, because they've got these open data formats, they have these blueprints that they can point to people and say, here, this is what I'm using, this is my data format. You know, and if it's an open format, chances are people who are using technology Y, technology Z, they may already have implementations of this open standard. So all Open-ade has to do is just do a data migration, pull the data from one system and plug it into the other. They don't have to rebuild the whole of their technology stack and all their ecosystem on top. So I guess the moral of this part of the story is that kind of open standards can prevent you from a lot of the technology problems that you kind of run into. I don't know if any of you have kind of run software projects before, but this is a kind of common thing. You want to change something in your data, you know, you haven't thought through the problem perhaps in the way you should, or somebody comes along with new ideas, then you have to kind of pay some developers to kind of beef up your custom system, pay lots of extra bucks and wait lots of time while all of this gets done, and that's kind of very common in the software world today. So let's dig into some of these advantages of open standards a little bit more. So I guess one of the big things for me is that it really opens up collaborative working. So, so whatever problem you're working on, other people have, you know, going to be working in that area too. So why not get their ideas involved? Different people are going to be working on different parts of the problem. So you can get a very broad spectrum of input if you're all working on a common data standard. You can use the wisdom of the crowds to kind of feed into your ideas. And when you're talking to other people about common data standards, you also start to realise you're talking the same kind of languages, the same vocabularies, the same ontologies. So this gives you something you can share. And also by having these conversations, you're talking to different people from different organisations. And, you know, so this starts to open up communication channels as well by talking around common standards. And in fact, if you look at the W3C mailing list, which generates a lot of the open standards, you'll see huge organisations like IBM, you'll see some Bristol ones like Epimorphics. Paul was here from Epimorphics, probably Jen's been on some of the discussion lists as well. You just get this very broad spectrum of people working on the problems. So in other words, open standards don't just let you swap data around easily, they open up communication channels between organisations and people as well. I'm running low on time, but just quickly, basically the world at the moment is full of data silos. If you're using your own data format, if you're being a know-it-all-ade, and you want to open source your data, you bang it out there and people are like, okay, what's this? I've got to sit down and work out how know-it-all-ade works. If you're using open standards, then you're already releasing data in a shared way. You know, it's already according to common schemas and standards, so other people can pick it up and start to work with it more easily. And also, your ecosystems built on top can certainly, you know, be cross-compatible with other guys. And last big point really is, and this is a really key one for me, is getting independence from vendors. It's easy to find people who will sell you whole technology stacks to solve a problem. They'll say, this technology will do it, bang, you know, you pay them lots of money. Lots of things can go wrong, you know, vendors can go out of business, they can change their pricing, they may bump up their pricing, or they may drop support for a product later, and where does that leave you? You know, you're really stuck then. If you're using open standards, so you can find other vendors who are using, who can sell you, data in that structure. And yeah, you just have a better way of kind of reusing your tools and all the effort you've put into your tools. So the key takeaways really are that data standards really, it's not just about swapping data around, it's about opening up communication channels and having chats to other people who are kind of doing work in the same area as you, and solve some of these problems like getting dependent on data providers and developers and technology stacks. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Last in the billing order is always a difficult one, and it's potentially quite a technical area that you're talking about, but I thought that was a really nice metaphor that you used. Does anyone have any questions that they'd like to raise? Thanks.
Are we on? Yeah, great, totally agree with you.
Cool, thanks.
Unless
on lemonade.
Know-it-all-ade and 3 of their buddies have total market saturation, will dispel everything that Open-ade say and do, have got a total monopoly on IG, data sharing, and all of these things, because that's where we are. That's where we're at.
So that's where we've been at in a lot of other fields as well up to now. The interesting thing that's happening, so for example, even IBM is like a big closed source shop. And they're finding like if they keep these closed systems, then you get this community uprising of people making their own solutions just because they can't afford what's out there. That bubbles up, you then start to get the ecosystem of technology and standards around it. And now even IBM are having to open source their stuff, not by their own choices. And, other guys, yeah.
Microsoft has just gone open source and cross-platform. You'd say that Microsoft and Apple had a complete monopoly, but Linux was doing all right, and Microsoft is open sourcing. So
10 years ago, Microsoft said open source was a cancer. So it's that they
yeah, right. I mean, that's quite a turnabout. So I don't think that's panning out.
But I accept what you're saying. You're saying in your field you have problems with vendors locking them down. So if we can get data standards in there, that's a way of leveraging your way out of those vendors.
And it's just a direct response to their notice.
So there are lots of data standards in healthcare. I think openly provocative. I think one of the problems here is around the quality of procurement of systems and IT and what people are buying. And I think that's something that those providing solutions into healthcare specifically need to be really aware of, supporting good quality procurement, fit for purpose procurement, and I'm going to use the accountability word again.
Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, I think although developers in some sense are your enemy because they cost money and things, but talk to your developers because they're often, if they have to do something, they'll start with the open source route first. It's like, what can I get my hands on right now? So they may actually be a step ahead of you in terms of looking for solutions because they're looking for the quick, cheap, easy way on a Monday night that they can quickly get the job done. So they may be doing some of the work for you. But
I would say the most significant thing of the evening now.
Sorry. Can we repeat that one? Thanks.
Okay, nothing happened there. I just wanted to respond with a heartwarming tale about the three organisations sort of collaborating, and I'm thinking of the search engine companies, Microsoft, Bing, and Google, and a large, I think, Russian search engine. And there they decided they were going to do a data standard to embed in all the search, embed search terms and so on within documents. And so they look around for somebody who's an expert in that, and they actually took the guy, Dan Brickley, as the head of schema.org. They took him, and he was the person who originated the friend of a friend vocabulary that you were talking about earlier. So there is hope for through infiltration, I think.
Well, just a point on that, yeah, I think the world's becoming so interconnected and people want to share data, not just with getting data and analysts involved. They want to automate all of this data, shuffling it from place to place. Search engines are a good example of that. They can't make a different data format for every website in the world. So that's where you necessarily have to have these open standards, and they're really bubbling through. But because there just aren't enough developers in the world to work out how all of these data standards are going to work, how all of these different ad hoc data schemes are going to work together, we have to go towards common standards to get the benefits of scalability and machinery.
Thank you. I think that we have perhaps time for one more question before breaking out again. I think it's quite late in the evening, and these are meaty topics that we're engaging with.
Yeah, it's just a really quick one. If I've just finished reading The Circle by Dave Eggers, and I'm just interested in the radical extension of your logic in terms of creating a system that essentially controls everything, and that this is what the book presupposes, that if Google, Apple, and Facebook all group together, then actually we would create a tyranny. But I'm just interested to see how fearful you are of what are the side effects?
So I guess the big point, and this is a big thing that I should have said up front, is open standards does not mean open data. They're not the same thing. So to help your organisation, you can have open standards and never release a single piece of your data. It just helps you as a company that you've got something consistent to work with. So it's like actually kind of separate but related areas. You know, it's kind of, it helps when you come around to open data, but you can still keep up everything and not share it with a single person. So yeah, I guess I'm basically just saying there's not an inevitability that when you use open standards, it leads to this whole, you know, everybody knows all of your data secrets. You know, you choose where you put that kind of cut off and where what data you release and don't. And open standards can help you either way.
Great, thank you very much. There is, well, Kevin.